We go live in 1 minute. Live in 1 minute. Okay, welcome. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. A couple of quick things. We are coming to you live through the America Free Radio studios on the Revolution Radio Network on freedomslips.com. This is the largest listener-supported radio program out there. So all of you, please go to Revolution Radio or freedomslips.com and put yourself on a regular donation of a couple bucks a month and help this studio out. Studio A and Studio B, full of the best hosts in the business, and as you can see on TalkStream Live, climbing the charts every single week. All right, let's get started. We have 2 hours and a lot of stuff to get through. We are live on, of course, the Revolution Radio Network, and we are also live on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel at brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew, or youtube.com/Brooks Agnew, you can follow us. Our goal tonight is to double our YouTube listenership by the end of this month. So whatever it is we hit tonight, we're going to double it in a week. You got that? In 1 week, next Wednesday, we double what we have tonight. So grab a friend, easy to do, and bring them to YouTube Live on Wednesday nights. And don't forget to subscribe, and please turn on your notifications so you know when we go live. All right, let's get right to it. My first story, Mitt No More. Yes, the Utah Republican Party is reportedly considering multiple resolutions following Senator Mitt Romney's vote to convict President Donald Trump against the wishes of his constituents. In the impeachment trial, they are including a resolution calling for his resignation. According to local Salt Lake City news outlet 2KUTV, the Utah Republican Party has pending resolutions on Romney, one that expresses support for Trump's acquittal, another that supports legislation to recall a U.S. senator, and a third that calls for Romney to immediately resign from office. And it is getting an enormous amount of support. The Utah GOP will possibly vote on these resolutions on February 29th. That's 10 days from now. The report also states it is unclear what kind of support the resolutions have. That means the support is very large. Romney was the only Republican who voted for Trump's removal from office on the charge of abuse of power. He did not, however, vote for Trump's conviction on the charge of obstruction of Congress. Trump was acquitted anyway, with the rest of the Republicans voting for acquittal on both charges, and every Senate Democrat voting for removal. Every single one of them, including the Democrat from West Virginia, who we actually gave a pass. We gave a pass because of the way he sounded, and Senator Manchin was really kind of hanging in there, kind of supporting Trump. He didn't want to really piss off Trump voters. You know what, Senator? You're done. You're out of there. Forget it. Forget it. Mitt Romney is forever bitter that he will never be the president of the United States. He was too weak to beat the Democrats then, so he's joining them now. He's now officially a member of the resistance and should be expelled from the GOP, and I could not agree more. All right, let's change gears, go across the world to the Wuhan zombie apocalypse. Yeah. Yesterday, drone robots began going door to door in Wuhan, informing residents via audio recordings in Chinese that they are no longer allowed out of their homes for any reason, not even to buy food once a week until further notice. No going down to the noodle shop, no going down to Tai Chi, none of that. The video of the drone making the announcement is out there. People have already heard it. You've seen the translation. It seems that the outbreak of the coronavirus has gotten so terrible that the government of China is now willing to let the citizens of Wuhan literally starve or dehydrate to death. This is happening in China, just about 2 months into the outbreak. Necessarily, it means it can happen here in America too. Although I think that our social structure, that is to say the way our towns and cities are set up and the way we treat hygiene in this country to compare to other countries, I don't think it will spread like that. But there are areas of our country that do have this issue. And the way that we move things around our country, it's not like other countries where a lot of things are regional, like things that are grown right down the street are eaten right down the street. It's not that way here. Here, things move a lot. We truck things everywhere. Most Americans remain really uninformed on this. So I'm trying to bring enough information to you that you can stay informed, but not so much that you go crazy and lock yourself in your house or begin to break into your food storage. Don't do that yet. When the government finally can't hide it, it's sort of like being, pregnant. You can hide it for 1 or 2 or 3 months. About the 4th month, it's going to show. And that's about where we are. Movement is going to be restricted, especially if there's an outbreak in a certain area. San Francisco, LA, Dallas, Miami. If an outbreak happens, you could very well see a quarantine. And this is the way it will have to go with a bioweapon. This is no ordinary flu. This was an engineered bioweapon. We now know that. The genetic markers are there. The gene group manipulation is clearly visible. The virus can live on surfaces for up to 28 days. That means toilet seats, doorknobs, cell phones, laptops. It can rest on surfaces, especially if you sneeze on it or cough on it, which could be anywhere. I mean, somebody opens up a cooler in a florist and sneezes on the flowers. Boom, it's all over the flowers. Those flowers get distributed everywhere, from weddings to funeral homes to Valentine's, and next thing you know, you have it spread. There was a book out years ago. I recommend it. It's good reading. Frank Herbert. He's great author of the Dune. You remember the whole Dune thing. He wrote a book called The White Plague. In the book, The White Plague, there is a weapons biologist who his wife ends up getting sick, and the government cheats him out of the insurance that he needs to save his wife. I don't know if it's an operation or what. I can't remember that detail about the book, but at any rate, his wife dies. Well, he holds the government. In fact, he holds everybody responsible for it. So he quits. He moves home where he has a very capable biolab set up, and he develops a bioweapon. Now, once he gets the weapon designed, the next thing is to deploy it. Now, we all know how this deployed in China. It deployed in Wuhan, right next to the bioweapons lab. It's kind of dumb, but, maybe we'll just cover that in a minute. But the point is that he decided to deploy this weapon in a way that it wouldn't be immediately traceable back to him, where they could develop a vaccine for it or some way to stop it. So he decided to go to the bank and he bought up different kinds of currency. He bought up British pounds. He bought up euros. He bought up yuan. He bought up rubles. And what he did is he put the bioweapon on the cash itself. And then he put it in envelopes and he mailed it to, quote, sweepstakes recipients. Congratulations, you've won our washing powders sweepstake. Here's, $100. Here's 100 pounds. Here's, 500 rubles or whatever. Well, what do you think people are going to do? Well, I didn't enter in any soap sweepstakes. I'm sending this money back. No, they accepted it because it was cash. And what did they do? They went right out and spent it. They went out to eat. They went to the grocery. They went to the movies. They went to the laundromat, whatever. That cash went into circulation, and everybody that handled it came down with the disease. The disease, as it turns out, was designed to kill only women. Yes, it killed only women. And the reason they couldn't stop it is because it broke out so many places all over the world all at one time, and it spread in just a matter of months. It was devastating to the entire population of the human race. And there are other exciting things about the book too, because Frank Herbert is an awesome author. But the point is that this was well deployed, just like a weapon. This was deployed, but it was deployed right next to where it was developed. Now, this tells me one of two things. Either it was an accident, it accidentally leaked out on somebody's, badge or their robe or their mask or their trash. Somehow it leaked out. And the outbreak got away from them. And as is wont in China, bad news does not travel. I mean, you can't even scowl in China. You have a sour look on your face, you're going to have social demerits. You've got to have a happy face. You've got to be a happy Chinese person in China in order to have a high social score. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to ride the bus. You're not going to be able to buy tickets to a movie. You're not going to be able to do the things you want to do because bad news doesn't travel in China. So it had a chance to get a foothold. And this 28-day gestation period where it's active, 28-day survival period on any surface makes it easy to spread. So a couple months maybe leaked out in the first week of December or the last week of November. Well, here we are in the final week of February, and just now we're beginning to take, serious action. So it's had a chance to exponentially spread. The other thing is that it was deployed on purpose. It was deployed on purpose locally. Now, that seems to me it would be one of two things, right? Let's just use binary logic. Either it was released on purpose by a single employee who had maybe a bone to pick with the lab or had a bone to pick with the Chinese government, just like Frank Herbert's fictional character, or, just using binary logic here, or it was the government itself that deployed the weapon in the community where the bioweapon originated. Now, admittedly, that's not very imaginative on the government's credit. They could have deployed it more imaginatively. And if you think about it, why did they develop these weapons? Well, they developed them not to attack their own community, but to attack other communities like ours. But what if the government deployed it in order to reduce its population? What if the government deployed it in Wuhan, which, by the way, is the epicenter of about 90% of the big tools that are made in this country? And I'm not talking about wrenches or hammers. I'm talking about robots and injection moldings and metal stamping molds and metal forming tools for the automotive industry, for all kinds of heavy industry in the United States and Europe. What if the heavy tooling for the world was shut down? Now think about it. Just use your brain for a second. For how long? For 30 years, 35 years, China has systematically been exporting, or actually importing, our technology into their country. These technology transfer meetings that they had, big celebratory meetings in China, it wasn't to build up the Chinese economy per se. It was to build up the economies of other countries like the United States. I personally went down to Lumberton, Mississippi and liquidated a manufacturing plant that makes transformers. I don't mean the little transformers like you have in your computer. I mean the big ones like you have in your front yard. That green thing you have in your lawn or the neighbor's lawn, that pad mount transformer. That's a serious part of our economy. I liquidated that plant. And a lot of the equipment, the robots, the presses, the phosphate washing systems, big lasers, guess where it went? Nope. Didn't go to anybody in the United States. It got loaded up on ships and shipped to China, all of it. And it didn't happen in that plant. It happened in all the plants. While Obama was destroying the United States economy, the Chinese were coming in and cleaning out our manufacturing plants. Millions and millions and millions and tens of millions of square feet of manufacturing space was emptied. All that work, thousands, 70,000 companies? That's almost boggles my mind. 70,000 companies worth of equipment was shipped to China. China wanted the business, and we were willing to ship it to them. Why? Because it was fast, it was cheap, and it was pretty good quality. But what happened to us? What happened was all that manufacturing space, including all that space up there in Rockford, Illinois, all that space over there in Maine that made big engine blocks and big drive shafts and big giant steel tools, all that property got repurposed. They got all condoed out. People with, nail shops and people with, graphic arts companies, they took all that space. Hundreds of little companies went in and took space that was occupied by one big company. And because why? Because all the big company's equipment was gone. All the reactors, all the tanks, all the pumps, all the robots, all the presses, all of it. It all went to China. Now, China may or may not have been making a profit on this because in those days, labor was pretty cheap, and now maybe it's getting a little more expensive. But here's the deal. We lost our ability to make those things. We lost our ability to make those things. So in the first quarter of 2020, China is probably going to book pretty close to a 0% GDP. Zero. When the Chinese New Year was over, that Monday morning, only 10% of the workers showed up to make iPhones. So what did Apple do? Apple said, you know what? We're not going to make our earnings. We're going to miss. And they're not the only company. A lot of the Dow, a lot of the NASDAQ is going to miss. Why? Because all the components that go into those things, from little tiny microchips to big pieces of steel, it's all made in China. All the equipment, all the robots, all the presses, and unfortunately, all of the technology is in China. So if the Chinese can take down the centers that ship or export that technology to the United States and to Europe, it is a counterpunch to the trade war. Sure, President Trump was able to negotiate the first deal in forever with China. China happily signed it. And what happened? All the while they were negotiating, all the while tariffs were going back and forth and negotiations were being bandied about in the press. And, one person was saying, oh, I love President Xi. And the other person was saying, well, we think the world of Donald Trump, back and forth. This big international schmooze fest, Davos, and on. All the while, that bioweapon was ticking through the community, house by house, complex by complex, restaurant by restaurant, floor by floor, block by block. And now it is a real problem. Well, in the United States right now, we have about 2.4 hospital beds for every 1,000 in our population. That's it. We don't have a lot of empty space in our hospitals because that doesn't make money. We have consolidated and acquired and merged our hospital systems so that there are 2.4 hospital beds for every 1,000 people. And by the way, a lot of those hospitals, they don't even have emergency rooms. You know why? Because emergency rooms don't make any money. The clinics pick up the slack. The clinics pick up the sniffles and the bruises and the headaches and the, heart attacks and all. They're the primary care. Then you go to the specialist. The specialist is at the hospital. Then you get admitted. But emergency rooms are being farmed out. They're being subcontracted out. 2.4 beds per 1,000 in population. Now, if 1,000 people get exposed to this bioweapon, which we're calling the coronavirus, 830 people are going to get sick. It has an 83% infection rate. Yes, 1,000 people get exposed, and within 2 weeks to 4 weeks, 830 of them will get sick. And about half of those that get sick are going to require some hospitalization. Depends on their level of health. If they're elderly, if they're very young, which I don't see a lot of kids dying from this coronavirus. Most of them are elderly. But if they're elderly, they're getting this secondary pneumonia, which is a real bad pneumonia and very aggressive. Then they have to be hospitalized. So about every 400 people out of that, 830, they're going to need a hospital bed, right? They're going to need to be in a special floor of the hospital with special containment, special disinfectants, right? But there's only 2.4 hospital beds for those 400 people. Now you begin to see the problem. 2.4 beds to accommodate 400 people. So the rest, the other 398 or 396.4, they're not going to get care. They're not going to get top-notch care. They're going to be sent home. And 15% of those 2.4 people that do get hospital beds, they're going to die. So 65% of the 398 remaining sick people, they're probably going to die. And that converts to 258 dead out of every 1,000 infected. I'm just doing the math here, people. It's just basic mathematics. Plus or minus 10%, I'm still going to be able to make my point here. These are the real world statistics for this virus, unless it mutates. If it mutates into something that, turns into golden butterflies, I'm fine. But these bioweapons don't normally do that. The numbers claiming otherwise from inside China, you know what? I do this for a living. I've been doing it for a living for a long time. I'm a well-published statistician. I'm here to tell you, I don't believe the numbers coming out of China, especially when I look at Epoch Times' story. Epoch Times is a Chinese-American newspaper, an independent newspaper inside the United States. Actually, they're global, but we read them mostly in the United States. And they sent reporters to China. They sent reporters to check. You know where they went? They went to the crematoriums. They went to the place where they cremate the bodies. Yeah. And they counted heads. Now, on a normal day, the crematorium is run every day because there's a lot of people in China. They cremate about 175 people a day. That's a pretty good amount, but we're talking about a country with 1.3 billion people, about 4 times the size of our country. So 175 people a day on a normal day. Except that when Epoch Times reporter went there, they were cremating 475 people a day. Yeah. And according to Chinese regulations and rules, you cremate all the victims of coronavirus together. You just put them in and cremate them together. You don't cremate uncoronavirus dead with coronavirus dead. So the 475 that were being cremated were all coronavirus dead. The other 175 were put on ice, so to speak, until that day of cremation was done. When you extrapolate that out to all the crematoriums that they visited, and you extrapolate that number, the value of the number of people who were dying from this coronavirus is actually about 10 times that of what China was reporting. Don't take my word for it. Senator Tom Cotton was talking to the Senate this week, and he said basically the same thing that I'm saying, that the real world numbers coming out of China, the real world values that should be coming out of China are 1 to 2 orders of magnitude. That's 10 to 100 times the numbers that China is actually reporting. China is reporting 30,000 people infected. Chances are we're really talking about 3 million people infected. And it doesn't take long to see that one person moving about, their average day, they're going to see 10, 15, 20 people. And those 10 or 15 or 20 people are probably going to experience the same infection rate, about 83%. And those 83%, about half of them are going to get seriously ill. And of those, about 15% of those are going to die. This is a really, really serious thing. So, as of today, we believe that the numbers are around 760 million people in 70 cities in China are under quarantine. That's roughly double the population of the United States under some kind of quarantine. Health officials here in the USA are already concealing the number of confirmed infections from officials at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, who are concealing over 1,000 cases as of 2 weeks ago, to the local county health commissioner in Erie County, New York, that's near Buffalo. He issued a gag order preventing police, fire, and EMS from talking to anyone about coronavirus cases. The people in the USA are not being told the truth. Officials fear mass panic would occur if people find out, so they are intentionally keeping the whole thing hush-hush. Really, who are they protecting here? Who are they protecting? Are we going to are we going to be stampeding? Are we going to be rushing down to Sam's Club and fill up? Well, maybe, but maybe you should do that slowly without a lot of panic. By the way, I just want to say hello to all the people that are in the chat room. I can't get you all. MG, I'm so glad you're out there. Planet X, good to see you. Yes, triple it. Yeah, exactly. And William, yes, all good thoughts. I'm getting to that. Just have a little patience. I'm getting to it. I'm going to make this point. One of the connections that I have, of course, is in the logistics business because of the nature of the business that I'm in manufacturing. And commercial truck traffic is vital, absolutely vital to our nation's economic prosperity. We have talked about what would happen if, there was a big EMP or if there was a big diesel shortage, how it would impact us because goods and services would not be moving around the way that they do now. When several years ago I made a presentation in Amsterdam on the dangers of a natural EMP from the sun, like a Carrington event, and I was approaching it from a study that was done by the National Electrical Reliability Corporation, the NERC. The NERC is a private company, but it has been contracted to manage the power distribution of our electrical grid in our country. The way there's a lot of management to this. It's not just like, hey, switch some power from, Knoxville, Tennessee down to Atlanta. It's not that easy. These big tension lines, they carry anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000 volts on them. But it's three-phase electricity. 120 degrees in each phase. The issue is that those phases have to match. So if you're sending energy from, say, Duke Energy in Charlotte, and you're going to send it to, say, Indiana, it has to match the phase. You cannot send power along the lines and switch it into another part of the grid without matching the phase of what's being generated in that area. Because if you do, you're going to get what's called a power factor. A power factor is where the two energies begin to fight each other and they build up heat, and it's not very efficient. In fact, motors inside of plants create a back EMF that goes backwards through the line. Oftentimes, these companies have to have big power factor capacitors on their switchgear. That prevents the back EMF from going backwards from the motors back through the lines to the power company. They will allow you about 90% efficiency. Once it drops below that, that is to say, once your EMF feeding back to the power company exceeds 10%, the power company will start fining you. They make it financially a financial incentive for you to install and maintain those power factor capacitors on your switchgear. So the reason that I bring this up is because the NERC was created and was funded with $200 million a year because when we formed the grid and we were able to move power from one nuclear power plant to augment the needs of another nuclear power plant in, say, New York or in Minneapolis, it created three vulnerabilities. And those three vulnerabilities were to either a natural disaster, like a tidal wave, an earthquake, a natural EMP from the sun, or a cyber or physical attack, right? If somebody hacked into a nuclear power plant in Orlando, you'd have to make up the energy from Virginia and send it down to Orlando and Miami. You'd have to valve out that one nuclear power plant, and you'd have to help out with other nuclear power plants. And the third vulnerability is pandemic. Now, you understand, if the grid didn't exist, if we had independent power companies and they weren't connected to one another by these big high tension lines going across the country, we would not have that vulnerability. That's one of the reasons why I was over there talking to those two companies, Europe and the United States, because I was proposing low voltage, local supply in order to pick up the essential services should we have something like a pandemic or one of these other two vulnerabilities. So it's the same thing with trucking. Over 80% of all freight transported annually in the United States alone accounts for $700.4 billion worth of goods, all transported by truck. Trucks need truck drivers. The companies and plants that make everything from tuna fish to cantaloupe to cabbage to fish, all that gets put into containers to get put on truck that gets transported, all that requires healthy people on those ends. Trucks hauled 65.6% of the shipments of value into Canada, 67% of the value shipped into Mexico. You see, it becomes apparent that any disruption in truck traffic is going to lead to rapid economic instability. And by rapid, I mean in some cases within hours, and in most cases within 72 hours. The unimpeded flow of trucks is absolutely critical to our just-in-time society. It just is. Your grocery stores right down the street from you, both of them, they don't have much more than about a 3-day food supply other than canned goods. Canned goods will last a little bit longer than that. But everything from broccoli to butter, from cereal to loaves of bread, 2 or 3 days max, it's replaced every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. The economic cost of these companies, if trucking were to stop, would be devastating. For instance, following Hurricane Katrina, trucks loaded with emergency goods were rerouted, and they left. And they created lengthy delays in delivering urgency needed supplies to the stricken area. Although in the face of an elevated threat level, a terrorist attack or pandemic, halting truck traffic may appear to be the best defense, actually puts most citizens at risk. Why? Because I would say if I walked out of my house here and I visited the other 200 houses and the apartments down the way, and they let me in, and I say, look, I'm just here. I just want to know how long a food supply you have in this house. I'm going to look in your fridge and your freezer and in your pantry, and if you have some dehydrated foods, I'm going to count that up too. I would say the average house has about a 5-day food supply. If they didn't go to the grocery for 5 days, they probably have rice and elbow macaroni and, tuna and soup and things they probably haven't touched in a couple of years, may have dated out in their pantry, but they could eat it. If they had to, they could eat it. They have probably a 5 days food supply if they rationed it. So what probably would happen in most communities is somewhere around 24 hours. If you don't believe me, tomorrow it's going to snow here in the Charlotte area. I mean, like half a dozen flakes are actually going to fall out of the sky. But what's going to happen is every loaf of bread and every gallon of milk and every package of eggs is going to be gone. Absolutely gone, as though there was going to be a 10-day blizzard come. You mark my words. Mark my words. In fact, if I went to the store after the program tonight at midnight, I'll bet you anything the milk shelves are just about empty. Yeah, I'm just telling you, the food in your store is not going to last. So consumer fear and panic, it actually exacerbates these shortages. So what's the smart thing to do? Well, the smart thing to do is to build up your food storage when there is no panic, right? It's to go to eBay or Amazon or one of the, you can go to Patriot Supply. You can buy up food storage for a couple $1,000 spread over, say, a 4 or 5 month period. You could fix your family up for 20 years. If you really had a bad thing happen, you could put enough dehydrated food in place, an effective water filter like a Catadine, canned goods to get your liquids and your protein to go with your dehydrated food, and you could take care of yourself for 2 to 3 months, not 2 to 3 days, you see. And while everyone's running down to the Piggly Wiggly or the Publix to stock up, fighting everybody else to get through the cash registers, you'll be sitting with your feet up at home saying, I'm okay. This is what I'm talking about. A supply of clean water, you should have that. If you have a pond close by, you can get a Catadine filter. It will filter out all the viruses. It'll filter out all the bacteria, and all that stuff will be out. Then you run through a charcoal filter to take care of all the chemicals that might be in it, because believe me, a ceramic filter is not going to take out any chemicals. You run through those 2 filters and you have drinkable water. It takes a little time. You might take 30 minutes to make a 2-liter bottle, but you're going to have time. A filter is a good way to go. If not, then you need to take the polyester bottles, not the polyethylene bottles like you get milk in. Don't do that, because that breathes and don't put it on your concrete floor, because you're going to get water that tastes like concrete. Use the polyester bottles like you get the 2 liters of Coke or 2 liters of Sprite. Use that to store water. Put 2 drops of chlorine in it. Don't worry about it. You're going to filter the chlorine out anyway when you drink it, but the chlorine will keep critters from growing in it. And you can store that. You could store it for 10 years in your garage, no problem. And believe me, 10 or 20 2-liter bottles of water can save your life and probably keep you smelling pretty good too. What we don't want to have happen is panic. That's what we do in this country. We communicate with one another. We don't hide these facts from one another. Go out when you go shopping this week, just because I'm giving you this information, spend a little extra, okay? Buy another jar of peanut butter. Buy another 8 cans of tuna. Just, what is it? $1.50 for a can of rotini pasta? That's a good source of carbs. Just pick up an extra 10 boxes. I'm just saying, you don't have to go out and panic. You don't have to go buy a pallet of stuff. If you get some extra money, go to eBay, go to Amazon, go to My Patriot Supply, pick up some dehydrated stuff. Remember, that stuff takes water, but it is a good source of protein and a good source of starch. So you can do that. These contingency plans ensure that affected areas, and we don't even know where the affected areas are going to be. There's a cruise ship in New Jersey. There was a cruise ship in Miami. There were people that were taken off a cruise ship in Japan and flown to Texas. They're all being put in quarantine, yes. But these are the ones we know about. These are the ones we know about. These contingency plans will help you weather this. And eventually we're going to get a handle on this. And it's going to be mitigated. Hospitals and other diagnostic and treatment facilities are going to exhaust supplies pretty quickly. If you are a diabetic, get another month of juice. If you have high blood pressure, make sure you have a 3-month supply on hand. It doesn't cost that much more. Any pharmacy will give you a 3-month supply for another $8, another $20. Just have a 3-month supply on hand. Because if you don't, and you stop taking that high blood pressure medicine, you're going to blow a gasket. So I'm just saying, make sure that you have all this stuff. And then remember that air and rail and maybe even maritime is going to be disrupted. You might not be able to jump on a plane and fly anywhere you want because that might be restricted. Fuel shortages may happen because drivers are going to get sick. Stuff is not going to be delivered. And I would say make sure you have a full tank at all times. You never know where you have to drive, and most cars will get 400 to 500 miles on a tank of gas. Public bus systems are going to stop. Trains are going to stop. Garbage pickup is not going to happen. These are things you just need to think about, okay? And that's about all I want to cover of this. I may cover a little bit of this next week, or if you listen to me on Sunday nights on America Free Radio on this same YouTube Live, then we'll cover that as well. These are just good common sense things to do. If you got another couple $100 in your savings account, you're not going to hurt yourself by buying a little extra food this week. You're going to eat it anyway. Just get it, and then you don't have to panic, okay? Don't be sitting at home thinking, I have to go to the grocery twice a week in order to survive. Just do it, okay? And be smart about it. Also in the news, this is kind of crazy. Doctors have been told by those who regulate their profession that they can deny treatment to patients who have the wrong opinion. Yeah, about just about anything, okay? It's happening in the United Kingdom already, where the National Health Service is expanding the authority of rules that already and logically allow doctors to decline to provide non-critical treatment to patients who are violent. Makes sense, right? But the expansion is raising eyebrows. At the Twitchy site, which aggregates Twitter comments, was the headline, and I quote, "But healthcare is a human right. UK's NHS has decided that staff can refuse to treat patients who make homophobic, sexist, or racist remarks," close quote. The commentary continues. Bernie Sanders and other Medicare for All proponents love to bust out the UK as a shining example of how wonderful and inclusive and universal healthcare can be. Well, here's what the NHS is up to these days. Currently, staff can refuse to treat non-critical patients who are verbally aggressive or physically violent toward them. But these protections will extend to any harassment, bullying, discrimination, including homophobic, sexist, or racist remarks. You see, the problem is in the definitions for these kinds of rules. Bureaucrats leave this stuff to be ambiguous, and then organizations can take license with it. The twitchy commentary said, that's just it. Physical violence is one thing, but a verbal hate crime could theoretically be anything that the staff member takes offensive. If a patient who's been waiting for hours and hours for treatment, because this is the NHS we're dealing with after all, lashes out and says something a staff member decides is homophobic, sexist, or racist, that patient can be denied treatment. Seems a little excessive, no? The changes were announced by UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock, who outlined new plans to crack down on physical violence. But he also is insisting on punishment for opinions. And the report said, and I quote, NHS Chief Executive Sir Simon Stevens said his service was determined to clamp down on abuse and aggression in all its forms. I should say that like Bernie Sanders, shouldn't I? Interestingly, a separate survey cited in the report that was published by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman found that 1 in 5 mental health patients do not feel safe in NHS care. Kind of interesting that a bad attitude will get you thrown out of the hospital, thrown out of the clinic. I've always said, if you like, excuse me, I'll just sip of my water here. If you think an energy bar and a juice box is a meal, you're going to love socialism. If you think waiting in line for 3 days with a raging fever to see a nurse practitioner is perfectly fine health care, Medicare for all, you're going to love socialism. If you think living in a dorm, in a bunk bed, or having a footlocker at the base of a rack with one blanket where you can sleep out of the cold, out of the rain, if you think that's housing, you're going to love socialism. Just be careful what you wish for. People often vote in socialism because of the charisma behind those that are trying to get it passed. And the only way out is blood. I'm just telling you. This is where the past meets the future, and I'm telling you straight up, Earth Explorers. Almost a billion people have been killed by socialists in this world. How many more do you have to see die before you realize socialism is bad in all its forms? Well, I understand if you went to a government school, you might disagree with me. I'm totally open with that. You have the freedom to speak. Well, not exactly, because this isn't a call-in program. Only my opinion counts, except in the chat room. And all those people, from what I can see, they agree with me. All right, let's talk a little bit about, got about a couple minutes left in this segment, and then we'll take a quick break. The U.S. Navy has begun finally seizing Iranian weapons. Yep. Navy guys have undergone a big attitude change since being held on their knees with their hands over their heads by Iranians under the Obama administration. The naval force under Obama in January of 2016 suffered through the humiliation of having several American soldiers taken prisoner by the Iranians in the Persian Gulf. After permitting the Iranians to board their vessel without a shot fired, the U.S. personnel were forced on their knees, hands behind their heads. They were crying. The women had to put hijabs on. It was something else. But now our fleet has a different commander-in-chief. And it shows. The Iranians were reminded of that fact this last Sunday, as the USS Normandy searched one of their innocent-looking smuggling vessels. A Dhow and Viola made a nice catch of the day. Oh, I don't speak French. It's voila. Voila. I don't speak French. It looks like Viola to me. Okay, Mademoiselle? They seized numerous items, including 150 anti-tank guided missiles. How did those get in there? Surface-to-air missiles? Oh, my goodness. I have no idea. I thought this was flour. Scopes, munitions, weapons parts, and other tools of war. The cash was on its way to the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Imagine that. Wow, and we thought the Yemenis were having a war with the Saudi Arabians. The Iranians are in a proxy war with the Saudis in Yemen, and the Houthis are Iranian allies. This is the second time recently the U.S. Navy caught the Iranians in a smuggling operation to the Houthis. In November, the USS Forrest Sherman made a similar haul, also in the Arabian Sea. You almost have to feel sorry for leadership in Tehran. For 8 happy years, they had a steadfast ally in the White House and in the U.S. State Department. That de facto Ba'ath Party membership sent them cash, cut them a sweetheart nuke deal, and even told the mullahs of Israeli attack plans to their nuclear program. The Iranians responded to all of the Obama cuddling by sending Qasem Soleimani to kill our forces in Iraq, and by seizing our sailors and parading the pics in front of all and sundry. But strangely, now when U.S. forces board their boats, it's the Iranians who do the surrendering. We have here another instructive lesson in the tale of two presidents. One who cowered in front of our enemies, and one who asserts U.S. interests, America first. It's a story Tehran is learning to their great distaste. So, no more surrendering. It's time for the global syndicate's weapons supplier to be put out of business. And let me just say, women of Persia, unite. Also in the news, we have about 1.5 minutes. Baseball and politics. Yep. Retired Major League Baseball player Aubrey Huff learned that he will not be included in the San Francisco Giants' plans to celebrate the anniversary of the team's 2010 World Series championship. And guess why? The team decided to exclude him, he's just 43, over, quote, multiple comments on social media that it described as unacceptable and antithesis to the values of our organization, according to a statement. It sounds like my recent Instagram ban. Yes, my harmless website, brooksagnew.com, is harmful to our community. They don't like my poetry. I can't believe it. Anyway, Huff released his own statement claiming the Giants CEO Larry Baer told him he wasn't invited to the celebration because the board didn't approve of my Twitter posts and my political support of President Donald Trump. And he said the issue is all politics and called the situation very hypocritical because Baer, Mr. Larry Baer, was placed on temporary leave last year after a video was captured of him shoving his wife to the ground as they fought over a cell phone in public. How about that? Let's take a quick break. We'll come back right after this. You YouTubers, hang out. Don't go anywhere. Okay, I think we're about ready to make the transition. I think it's 1 minute after is when the break music ends on Revolution Radio on the freedomslips.com website. And it is 1 minute after. So hopefully we are not stepping on anybody in audio out there. I do want to let everybody know about nippy.com, NPIEE.com. That's the North Pole Inner Earth Expedition. If you're listening to this live, you can go there right now, or if you're listening to it as an archive, you can do it simultaneously while you're listening. We're almost there, I'm pretty sure. Somebody out there in text land is going to let me know when the audio is not competing with me, but I think we're okay. We don't duplex with Revolution Radio, and so sometimes it gets a little bit difficult to keep tabs on that. But I think we should be clear by now. If you go to the website, npiee.com, which stands for North Pole Inner Earth Expedition, right on the front page, you can register for our newsletter, and we just sent out our first one as we prepare for our dry run this June. We're going to be going on the same route that the scientists and our crew are going to be taking when we go on the voyage to the Arctic Circle to search for the opening in the crust that mixes the two oceans together. It's pretty deep ocean. Now we're talking about 4 kilometers 4 kilometers deep. That's a pretty deep water. We are talking to a company that has a tethered drone, but their tethered drone is designed to only go to 1 kilometer, and we could probably put that on the vessel and take it. But in order to modify it to be able to go to 4 kilometers, it doubles the project cost. So we go from about $5 million to $10 million. So if you got a benefactor out there listening tonight, or you're listening on the archive, that's what it's going to take. Here's the deal. If we can put that drone on the bottom, we can take high definition video, we can take samples, and we can take instrumental measurements and feed them directly back to the ship. Because as I said, it's a tethered drone. That is to say, it's connected by a cord, and that cord puts us in direct communication to the bottom of the ocean. We're going to survey about 10,000 square miles. That's 100 miles by 100 miles in 10 days. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to look at all the bottom, but if we get some indication magnetically or chemically in the water that we're near what we call an oceanic vent, then we're going to drop some technology over the side and see if we can get some samples. If we could prove that this opening exists between our ocean and an inner ocean, we're going to change everything, and it's going to be very cool. Now, here's the great thing about it. If you go to the NPIE.com, the NPIE.com, and I'll put the link right down here in the bottom in the descriptions. If you go there and you go to the sponsorship tab, you're going to find ways you can participate that will give you access to that video. Oh, yeah. Not just the recorded video, but also monthly webinars where myself and the staff, Brad Olson and Suzanne Ross and Terry and Doc Skinner, will be live, and you can field questions or you can get answers for questions that you have. But you also get access to the live stream from the ship. Now, this is like a reality program on steroids. We'll have 4 channels streaming live to the satellite. We'll be downloading that to the US and to Europe, and it should be live to you. So, yes, you could watch it as an archive, but it is so cool. That boat's going to be running 24 hours a day. The sun never goes down up there in the summertime. And you're going to get to see what we see. So, yeah, no, there won't be any, okay, we're just, what do we see in this sample? And then they go to commercial. You know, whether it's, Gold Fever or Skull Island or whatever you want to go to, it's the same thing. None of that. This is straight feed to you. You want to stay up and eat popcorn and watch us, brave the seas and bust an ice for a couple of weeks. You get to watch it live. It would be way cool. Very, very affordable. Why do I remind you of John Wayne? John Wayne ever wear a hat like this? I mean, maybe in a movie. I don't know. Ray70 says that I remind him of John Wayne. Well, Pilgrim. No, I can't even do a John Wayne. I don't know where you get that. People say I look like Jack Nicholson, but not John Wayne. How do you get that? I'm just saying. Scott, good to see you out there. Kathleen, wow, new name. Good to see you. Yeah, North Carolina in the house. That's what I'm talking about. Alice, nice to see you. Yes, elevating images. I see. Very good. And MG, always good to see you. Brilliant comments out there. Yeah. MG asks, Roy, in attitude or stature? Maybe. I'm probably about as tall as the Duke. Yeah. I'm bigger. Yeah. Well, girth has its advantages sometimes. All right, let's talk a little bit about some news. One thing I did want to say to you, because it's coming up quick. It's important. The Human Origins Conference. It is April 2nd through 5th. It's in New Mexico. It's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. If you're within 200 miles of this place, that's the place to be. I'll put the link right down here on the bottom. Human Origins Conference. You can get the tickets through Eventbrite, easy search. And discounts are available. It's going to be at a resort. 30 hours of content from April 2nd to April 5th. And we're going to find all kinds of stuff to get into. So if you want to come see me live, you want to get your book signed, this is the time to come. I'm the keynote speaker. I promise you're going to enjoy this. We'll see you at the Human Origins Conference. Okay, let's get back. Let me get back to it here. Chinese collegiate espionage. Yeah, this is a big deal. When I graduated from Tennessee Tech in honors, on the honor roll in chemistry. Yes, I graduated with honors from Tennessee Technological University. Those of you that want to have a little bit of my CV. I went ahead and pushed because I wanted to get done. And I went both summers. I went straight through. So I was able to graduate in August of 1994. And it was a pretty big graduating class for the summer. Probably about 450 kids there. And I graduated first in my class, alphabetically. I didn't have the highest grades, but my last name does start with A. So there I was in the first seat. And I have to say that I was definitely in the minority. In fact, I would say about 90% of my class was Chinese. That's saying something because I got my degree in nuclear chemistry. And yeah, I had a lot of Chinese people. They couldn't speak English at all. They had one guy who could speak English, but the rest of them didn't. And I felt sorry for him because when we went to the library to study, we were at one table, they're at another table. But here's the deal. That one guy that could speak English, he took notes. He took copious notes. And then what he would do is translate his notes to the other Chinese-speaking students. They did well. They passed all the tests. They graduated with me. So it was a good class. But now the FBI is investigating China-related cases of economic espionage all across the country. Now, I graduated in 94. It's now 2020. Do the math. That's a lot of years. There's a big reason why Tennessee Tech, with 14,400 students, had about 90% Chinese graduating. Because it was Chinese money. Yeah. Well, there's a growing list of prosecutions against academics and researchers, and it's now making the headlines. Oh, yeah. The Bureau reports that the Chinese regime is using non-traditional collectors, such as professors, researchers, and front companies. These are companies with American-sounding names, but they're Chinese, I'm telling you, as opposed to traditional undercover spies to acquire sensitive technology from the United States. This comes after the FBI arrested a Harvard University professor for allegedly lying about receiving funding from the Chinese regime to open a research lab, guess where? In Wuhan, China. Additionally, a researcher at Boston University also indicted after allegedly failing to disclose that he was a lieutenant in the Chinese army. And a Chinese national allegedly attempted to smuggle biological materials from Boston Medical Center to China. They all have been indicted on federal charges. This is just scratching the surface, Earth Explorers, just scratching the surface. Former FBI undercover agent Mark Ruskin explained that the Harvard professor Charles Lieber was arrested for economic crimes as opposed to stealing classified information, which would be considered a type of, traditional espionage. He's been arrested and he's been charged with economic crimes, either with accepting payment for contracts for doing research, in those cases for China, or for accepting grant money, or for not revealing to the university that he worked that he was accepting grant money from the U.S. and China at the same time. Yeah, big deal. According to the court complaint, Lieber is accused of receiving not a small amount of money, $1.5 million, to open a research lab at the Wuhan University of Technology. That ain't Boston. The complaint also accuses Lieber of making materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements about his involvement in China's 1,000 Talents Plan. I can tell you a little about the 1,000 Talents Plan. I was invited to a ceremony in China in 2009. Oh, I had my suit and tie on, and there were probably 400 different people with different kinds of technology, everything from nanotechnology to robots to all kinds of things. We had electric vehicles. And yes, there was a member of the ambassador to China there. It looked a little bit like Chris Stevens, but it wasn't. I looked it up. It wasn't him. And we were sitting down across the table from Chinese counterparts with these big red portfolios, beautiful paper, beautiful printing, some in Chinese, some in English, and a pen, a beautiful pen. And what we had to do is we had to sign our signature in it because it was a big technology transfer meeting. Yes, big technology transfer meeting. And it was a big deal. We all stood up there on stage and we all bowed. Of course, I was in my suit that I had actually made in Hong Kong. I still have it. It still fits. The point is that this was the 1,000 Talents Plan. China was acquiring, just by nature of doing business with us, they were acquiring our technological secrets. All the patents, all the trade secrets that we had developed would become free and accessible to the Chinese government. I didn't sign. It just didn't happen. And it was, I went home disappointed. They were disappointed. Well, they said I was too shrewd. We have a saying, you are too shrewd. That's what they said. Is that like, thank you? No, that was really supposed to be an insult, but I accepted it. The point is, it's coercion in the sense that the professors are being enticed with being bribed with economic, financial incentives to work in China for Chinese research institutes. It's their money. It's our brains. That in itself is not espionage, okay? Espionage would be, to the extent that I understand it, obtaining classified information that's classified in the United States and then passing it to Chinese authorities. That's espionage. This isn't. While these individuals may be committing espionage in the classic sense, the utilization of a research contract may fall in a different area. It still will constitute potential violations of federal criminal law in the U.S., but it's a different type of crime. Okay, essentially, it's playing on the greed of the professors in order to have them, so essentially serving two different masters. But I suggest that one has to look at the specific areas that are being researched. It doesn't make any big deal if it's, electric vehicles or home insulation technology. This is different. Lieber received over $8 million in grants from the Department of Defense, our Department of Defense, in part from the Office of Naval Research and the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, according to the court complaint. Special Agent Reskin noted that there is a high risk if defense-related research falls into the wrong hands. If it is utilized for a military purpose by a power that's not sympathetic but hostile to the democratic countries, then there's a big risk. One of the primary things that this research gets used for, two things. One is nuclear, and the other is biologic warfare, like viral warfare. Okay? It is certainly a lot more cost effective to steal someone else's research and then either reverse engineer it or apply it in your own research activities. So it's very important for agencies like the FBI to be very active and aggressive in counterintelligence activities, because this is where it's happening. It's Chinese money, and it's American greed or American scarcity, if you want to put it that way. And this brain power is going to the highest bidder. And the highest bidder is the Chinese government. Not China, not the Chinese government. One thing to keep in mind with Western democracies, and in the U.S. in particular, is that a lot of information that is in use, especially when it comes to biology or virology, it's not classified. It's just too cumbersome to make classified, but it makes sense. Don't share this kind of information with an enemy government. The United States Department of Education has launched an investigation into Harvard, Yale, and other universities for apparently failing to report, and it's a lot of money. It's like close to $1 billion in foreign gifts and contracts. These financial payments buy more than admission for Chinese students. It secured access to university research. It also allowed Chinese influence in curricula and fact basis for things like history and government and political science. It's also buying access and influence in our film industry. You don't make a film that's critical to China. The recent movie of Red Dawn, it was a remake of the old one, where the Russians or the Soviets parachute in and Patrick Swayze, Wolverines, remember that? All that? Look, they remade it, but this time it was the Red Chinese. Oops, sorry, it's Chinese money at the studio. You're going to have to change all those flags, and now it's going to be North Korean. Yeah, it's going to be North Korean and not China. And so they changed it all. They changed the flags. They changed some of the lines. They changed the script. Why? Because it's Chinese money that's financing the films. Look at the remake of Top Gun with Tom Cruise. You've seen that? No? You haven't seen it? Well, you should. It's going to come out in your neighborhood pretty soon anyway. I'm going to see it because I like the original one. But you remember his jacket? You remember the jacket with the Chinese flag and you remember that? That's been swapped out. That's been CGI'd out. Now it's a different flag. No implication of China on the back of his jacket. Seems silly, doesn't it? But it's real. And if they'll do it in a movie, they'll do it in a classroom. And they are. They're changing our history. They're changing our kids. And our kids are coming out of school saying things like, socialism's okay. I would vote for socialism. Why? Because it's Chinese money that's influencing the digital textbooks. Last year, a U.S. Senate report found from January 2012 to June of 2018, 15 schools, 15 universities reported receiving about $15 million from Hanban, which is a propaganda arm of the Chinese regime, affiliated with their Ministry of Education. However, upon investigation of the financial records, it wasn't 15. It was 100. It was 100 U.S. schools. The Senate subcommittee found that Hanban directly contributed over $113 million to U.S. schools, which is over 7 times the amount the schools reported. They failed to report the money. Why? Because the United States Teachers Union is just about as corrupt as the Chinese government. I'm just telling you, President Trump, you're listening right now because he listens to this program on a regular basis. Maybe. I'm just saying maybe. It would be a good idea. It would be a good idea if he did. And if you know him, you might clue him in, because I think what you should do is dissolve the teachers union. You should dissolve it as a national security threat. President Reagan did it with the air traffic controllers. And yes, airplanes are important, but not as important as our students, not as important as our curricula. We cannot allow Chinese propaganda to be used as curricula in our schools. It should not happen, but it is happening. You need to dissolve the teachers union. A simple executive order would do it just like that, and it would be done. Okay? Now, something else is happening, and I think you should be made aware of it. There are 200 sanctuary cities in 28 states in our country. What does that mean? What does that mean? It basically means that a sanctuary city has declared that they are not going to cooperate with federal laws, federal immigration laws in their city. In other words, if a person is arrested for assault or rape or robbery or battery or vandalism, then they serve their time. And when their time is over, because now they've been convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony, they're handed over to ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and they are escorted out of the country because we do not want these criminal elements to exist illegally. They're already illegal aliens anyway. We don't want them to exist in our communities. But these sanctuary cities have said, no, that's fine with us. Yes, that's fine. He raped 2 girls. He served his year. He's back out, and records show that they don't stop. They keep doing it because they're here illegally, and they're already breaking the law. And now they've broken our other laws, and they're now being allowed to stay in our society, and that's unacceptable. So that's a sanctuary city. The other thing that the sanctuary cities are doing is they're facilitating illegals, that is to say, foreign citizens from everywhere, Jamaica, China, Somalia, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. They're allowing them to vote in local elections. All they need is a driver's license, and they have it, and now they have an address, and they can vote. And this is bad. It starts out in the local elections, and it's going to expand to the federal elections. And here's what's even worse than that, is they're being allowed to count on the census. So if a community has an extra 35,000 illegals in it, guess what they get? Yeah, they get an extra congressman. They get another congressman because their population went up. Who cares if they're not U.S. citizens? Well, Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, she announced on a conference call today that she was proposing a bill to block grant funding from the Department of Justice for local law enforcement in states with sanctuary cities. So this means a financial sanctions are going to be placed against states that have sanctuary cities, specifically against the cities. She said, when I look at the situation we have with immigration here in this country, I say, let's leave the system in better shape than we found it because it's a broken system. Now, states are beginning to really get back to where they were before 9/11. That they are going to provide these, and we think it is important to file legislation that would prohibit these sanctuary cities and these entities that are refusing to comply with federal immigration law to prohibit them from receiving taxpayer dollars through the grant programs over at the DOJ. The Stop Greenlighting Driver's Licenses for Illegal Immigrants Act is co-sponsored by Kevin Kramer, a Republican from North Dakota, Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas, Joni Ernst, a Republican from Iowa, Kelly Loeffler, a Republican from Georgia, Shelley Moore from West Virginia, Mike Rounds from South Dakota, and Ken Buck from Colorado. They're going to carry the bill in the House of Representatives. The bill would ban federal funding through the DOJ's Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance grants for local law enforcement in the 13 states and the Districts of Columbia, which currently allow illegal immigrants to receive state-issued driver's licenses. There are 28 states with sanctuary cities, but only 13 of them allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses. On Tuesday, the Virginia legislature passed 2 different bills that would allow illegal immigrants to obtain driver's licenses in the state. So did New Jersey, so did New York. The bill would ban federal funding through the DOJ's grant A similar measure was proposed by Justice Department under then Attorney General Jeff Sessions in 2017 to combat sanctuary policies, but liberal Obama-appointed federal judges in Pennsylvania, California, Illinois, and New York all subsequently ruled against the Trump administration. That's not going to happen this time. The Tennessee Republicans' announcement comes after Attorney General William Barr said Monday of this week that the Trump administration was beginning to heavily crack down on sanctuary jurisdictions for unconstitutionally interfering with federal immigration enforcement. I quote, "When we are talking about sanctuary cities, we're talking about policies that are designed to allow criminal aliens to escape. These policies are not about people who came to our country illegally, but have otherwise been peaceful and productive members of society. Their express purpose is to shelter aliens whom law enforcement has already arrested for other crimes besides being here illegally, and neither is lawful nor sensible." Close quote. Blackburn confirmed that she had made Department of Homeland Security aware of the legislation, but did not elaborate as to any coordination with the Trump administration. I like to see this. Everyone that I know likes to see this. We want to see these sanctuary cities terminated from their policy of protecting criminal aliens. I'm not talking about just illegal aliens who are here working at the restaurant or mowing grass or cutting hair or whatever, painting houses, framing. All that's fine. I'm talking about the ones that have already been arrested. They've already served time, and now they're getting out of prison. It's time for them to go. We're not going to allow the criminal element to stay. All right. Interesting story about illegal aliens, by the way. Not in Mexico. Not in the United States. In Mexico. Yeah. When most people hear the words undocumented immigrants, they think, people from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, right? Honduras. But did you know that there are a lot more Americans living illegally in Mexico? Yeah. I didn't think so. I thought maybe a few here and there. But the way Fox News and Trump talk, you'd think that only those drug-dealing rapists from south of the border. But it's not true. Look, the U.S. State Department confirmed that almost 1 million Americans are living illegally in Mexico. Yeah, I have two friends. I have two friends that are living down there right now, and they're living large. According to a study by the National Institute of Geography and Statistics, about 739,168 American citizens lived in Mexico in 2015, according to the National Institute of Immigration. Of those, only 65,302 were actually legal residents. That means 91.2% of the Americans living in Mexico in 2015 were there illegally. Yes, that's true. And that number has risen actually since 2015. Why? Because more people are retiring every single year. And I don't know if you've noticed lately, if you've turned 65 and you filed for your Social Security, it's not as much as you thought it was, right? You were thinking, oh yeah, I'll get like $3,000 a month. Think again. You're going to get about $2,000 if you retire at 65. Why? Well, while you were voting Democrat, they raised the retirement age to 66 and 2 months. And it's going to go up again. And it won't be very long to where you're going to have to be about 68 years old to retire with what they call the full benefit. Everything you put in, you're entitled to. If you retire at 65, you're going to take a little haircut, about 10%. Yeah. Where you thought you were going to get about $2,200, now you're going to get about $1,900. It's a little bit of a haircut. So you think about it, $1,900 plus they're going to tax you a little bit because they just can, and you got to get a Medicare supplement. That's going to be anywhere from $40 to a couple $100 a month, depends on what your health problems are. The point is, it ain't enough. You've been going through life maxing out your Social Security every single year or most years of your career. And then you get to 65, you're healthy, you're vibrant, you want to live, you want to take some time off, you're retiring, and now you take a 75% cut in pay. Not everybody's ready for that. Not everybody's debt-free. Not everybody's ready to, scale down that small. I mean, have you checked out rent in LA lately? Hell, rent in Tulsa, for that matter. Rent in Peoria. Yeah, it's about that. It's about $1,200, $1,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. So let's do the math here. Let's see, my car is paid for. I don't owe any money to any medical bills. Everything's good, but my rent's $1,200 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, and I'm taking in about $1,900 a month. You see, that fixed income's a little bit tight on that ass, isn't it? Not really enough. But guess what happens when you move south of the border? Guess what happens when you go to Panama, Ecuador? Guess what happens when you go down to Mexico? Well, hey, $1,500 a month. You're living in the Hacienda Grande. Everything's a little bit better. So while Trump's administration constantly tweets about illegals, they've conveniently failed to mention the reverse statistics. The horde of terrorists and criminal aliens that Trump tweets about, murdering and stealing American jobs, raping white women, blah, 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 all that. But of the roughly 11,328 people Trump has deported back to Mexico, only 723 were deported on serious criminal charges. The rest were deported on criminal charges, but not serious ones. Unlike the U.S., however, Mexico, they don't deport Americans. Of course, we don't commit crimes either. We go down there and we got money coming in. We have Social Security money. We have annuities coming in. Not enough to live high on the hog here in the U.S. But you go south of the border and you take a couple of people that say aren't married but like each other. They move in together. Now you got what, $3,000 a month coming in between you? You can live large south of the border. And more Americans are doing it. Now, something bad I see happening. It won't take very much longer before somebody in Congress figures this out. And they're going to stop the exporting of American retirement money. You're going to find yourself south of the border, and that debit card ain't going to work anymore. Why? Because you can't export Social Security money. It's coming. It's coming. I'm just telling you, they're going to find a way to screw you out of your retirement. So if you're going to do it now, and make sure you pack away a little cash. Make sure you figure out a way to earn some money down there, because it could be bad. It could be bad. I don't have enough time to cover the Irish Holocaust, or maybe I do. Let me check here. Yes, I do. I have enough time. I can cover this. That's because the clock's really small down there. I should have looked at my big one right here. You know, when we think about the Holocaust, we think about the Jews in World War II. And Lord knows it's well enough publicized. Never again, right? But not very many people, except me, because I happen to be Scottish, and I actually came from Scots who were driven out of Scotland in the 1700s, migrated through Canada, ended up down in the United States, and here we are. It is estimated that deliberate starvation, slavery, and the expulsion of the Irish and Scottish, and in fairness, some ordinary English folk too, peoples in fairly recent history, to a 50% loss of population. Yeah, it's true. These two nations suffered a population loss far worse than did the Slavs under ancient Antichrist Bolshevism, or by Germany that suffered a 13 million loss of population following World War II on account of Allied policy. Around 100,000 people fled Ireland for Canada in 1847 alone, just that year. And around 20,000 of those either died during the voyage or during their time spent in quarantine stations. Not unusually, the remains of 3 bodies were found washed up on a Canadian beach back in 2011. On the same beach in 2016, the remains of a further 18 bodies were discovered after an archaeological dig. Canadian scientists have now confirmed that a study of the bones show that these are the remains of Irish famine victims who fled from English occupation across the Atlantic in the mid-1800s. The initial remains were discovered in 2011 on a beach in Forillon National Park, Quebec. You know, the thing a lot of people don't think about here is that it wasn't because there was a potato famine in Ireland and Scotland. They grew plenty of potatoes to feed the Irish people and the Scottish people. The issue was that the English royalty moved in and confiscated the crop and left nothing for the Irish and the Scottish. They starved them out, and they had to leave en masse. And by the time they reached the West, either through Canada or the eastern parts of the United States, they were in poor health, and they died, a lot of them. These sad losses were identified as 2 7-year-old boys and an 11-year-old boy. According to the scientists, their bones indicated severe malnutrition. The dig in 2016 found evidence of 18 more bodies, most of whom were women and children. All were showing signs of malnutrition. It was speculated that they were passengers from the 1847 Carrick's shipwreck. The ship carried 180 people, all of them fleeing English sanctions imposed on Ireland during the artificial famine in England's pursuit of land clearance. They sailed from Sligo to Quebec and were under the command of Captain R. Thompson. On the 20th of April, 1847, the ship ran into a heavy storm in the Gulf of St. Lawrence and was shipwrecked around 4 miles east of the Canadian coast. Interestingly enough, January of 1847, 4 months before, the Mormons were driven out of Nauvoo, Illinois. 3,000 wagons lined up on the east side of the Mississippi River, which had frozen from shore to shore, and they crossed on the frozen Mississippi River, driven out by an extermination order issued by Governor Boggs of Illinois. Shoot every Mormon on sight. By the way, half the children in those wagons crossing that day had no shoes. It happened in the United States as well. It's estimated that between 120 and 150 people died as a result of that shipwreck. Those who survived had extremely plucky local fishermen to thank who braved the storm, rowing out to save them. Hang on a second, got a quick text here, just checking. No, I'm not watching the Democratic debate. I'd rather watch the Trump rally than the Democratic debate. You know, you could watch the Democrat debate in black and white. Yep, because color is not required to watch that debate. I want you to go out and realize that we're in the roaring 20s right now. We're in the roaring 20s. We have the potential to do great things and to accomplish great things. And all we really have to do is seize upon the moment. And I don't mean just any moment. I mean, let's plan the moment. And what do I mean by this? See if I can find it here. There we go. I'm talking about being coached, being mentored to find your optimum path. Now, I know you hear that a lot. A lot of people put word salad out there, and I'm not trying to do that to you right now. I'm just telling you, if you go to brooksagnew.com and you go all the way to the left and click on the webinars link and you sign up, it's 2 classes that you get for $47. The first one will begin on March 7th. March 7th is class 1. 2 weeks later, we have the second class. It'll cover journaling in detail. And we do a follow-up class to make sure that you're launched correctly. In this webinar, we're going to teach you how to make goals. We're going to teach you why to make goals. And we're going to teach you the power of resonance. It is a mathematical truism that powers the universe. It powers the formation of planets. It powers the formation of futures, of choice. If you don't believe me, look around you. Because there are powers out there that are making you useful to them by bathing you in their propaganda every single day, every media that you see, movies and education and litigation and legislation and radio and TV. They're bathing you in their idea of a future. And they're using your conscious energy to add to their resonance, to build their reality. And I'm just telling you, these are true principles and they work for good as well. You can take control of your own resonant input, and I can teach you the patterns. Trust me, I do this with the Fortune 500 every single day. I've been doing it for years and years, and I've made them a ton of money. And I'm about to retire. So I would like to do it for you. This is your chance to do business with one of the best Six Sigma masters in the country, me. Put me on your team. It's super simple to do. You don't even have to leave the house. I want you to come to the conferences because I want to see you live, yes. But everyone knows those are expensive. You got to buy a plane ticket. You got to buy a hotel. If you can't do that, you can afford $47. I'm not going to charge you $1,000 because I feel bad about taking somebody's condo payment from them to teach them how to be successful. I couldn't sleep at night. So I'm going to take the price of one night out. One night out, $47. You're going to trade that to get this priceless information. Once you get it in your hands, the whole future opens up to you. Everything is in your control. Go to brooksagnew.com, go to the left, you'll see the webinars link. You see the little arrows pointing down there. I'm going to put the link right down here in the descriptions. You click on that, I promise. The 2 hours you spend with me at noon on Saturday, and then 2 weeks later, another hour, those 3 hours will change your life. And it will give you the boost that you're looking for. You're going to be able to break the cycle of failure that you've had in your life. Okay? So let's do that. Let's do that. And also, I want to let you know about the Human Origins Conference. If you're checking in late, just go to the Human Origins Conference. If you go to brooksagnew.com and click on the upcoming events, you'll see the link. You can buy the tickets at Eventbrite. Eventbrite is a great place to buy tickets. And what you'll learn there, 30 hours, the best speakers in the country. And also don't forget to go to nippy.com. North Pole Inner Earth Expedition, if you're interested in following our progress on this expedition above the Arctic Circle in 2021. It takes a tremendous amount of work and forethought to put this together. This summer in June, we're going to take a dry run. We're going to make a ton of great videos on this trip. You're going to see Moscow and St. Petersburg and Murmansk and hopefully some of the ships that we're going to be sailing on. And you're going to get to participate in all that. All you have to do is go there and register. You can do it for free or you can participate under the sponsorship tab and have access to some of this exclusive video. Nobody else gets to see it but you. So do that, and I will see you there. Let's address some things that we got going in the chat room here. Let's see. We got Terry and MG and Piper and David. Good to see you. Always good to see you. Elevating images. Britain has always been an enemy of humanity. I think we'll clear it up just a little bit there, elevating. I think it's the British royalty. Yeah. The British people, I've never had a bone to pick with them. Yeah, we've gone to war a bunch of times with them. We've charged across the frozen tundra at them a bunch of times. But generally speaking, it is the British royalty. We've always wanted to do away with that. Kathleen, thank you for such sweet things you've said tonight, all during the chat room. Your comments down there. I thank you very much, Chuck. What is this? The poop is about to hit the fan. China products are going out of stock or going way up in price on Amazon. Could be. And you know what? About 90% of a lot of that stuff we take for granted every day, like cheap shirts at Walmart, it's all going to go away. Or at least we're going to have a break in supply. So I just think it's a good idea to go out and check. I agree with all that. I also want to say hello to all the people at Revolution Radio and at freedomslips.com. You're sitting there in the chat room chatting away, and I'm not seeing it because I only have two screens, so I can only see so much. If you want to get messages to me, you can do it one of several ways. You can write me at Brooks. That's my first name, Brooks, at birthfan.com. Birthfan.com. Why do I do that? Because I want you to realize that I have these wonderful books at Amazon. The Birth Trilogy is a journey. People are calling it the Birth Journey. It's a novel, yes, but very, very powerful. And you could read it, and you could also hear it for free. All of the books that you see here in YouTube, and you can find all these on Amazon, every single one of them is available in audio. So you can get the audio a couple of ways. One is you can order the audio at my website, brooksagnew.com, or you could just buy the paperback from Amazon, and right inside the cover is the address. And if you write to that email address, I'm going to send you the audio version for free. So if you're not a great reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you. You get the book, and you get the audio book to go with it for free. There's no better deal out there anywhere. Okay? But the Birth Trilogy is a journey, and you should take it and never return. It's a great story. Go there and look at some of the reviews. I promise you'll like it. Okay? Yes, I hear some clicking out there, but we're going to be breaking here in about, let me just check this. We got about 5 minutes left. Any other questions there in the chat room? If you want to put them in there, I will address them. Let's see. It's a long ways away. I'm just helping out a little bit. There's a question. Just my usual North Pole Inner Earth contribution. Come on, you guys, chip in. David, thank you for the $5 top chat. This is, you just warm my heart every time you do this. It's just wonderful. Smiley B says, loved the Birth series. How's the movie going? Actually, one of my producers is making a movie called Fly, The Rise of Jet Parker. It's a trilogy. It is about indoor skydiving, romance and espionage and all that stuff that goes with it. It's going to be a great movie. He's got the scripts done. He's already done some of the promos. And once that movie is done, once that trilogy is launched, that producer is going to free up some time to be able to spend on birth. Now, I've written 4 of the 42 scripts. I could write them all, and I would, except I'm currently working on an 11th book. And that book is going to be introduced, by the way, at the Contact in the Desert conference at the end of May. If you are out there, and some of you in the chat room are going to be there at the Contact in the Desert, this is the biggest UFO disclosure conference in the world. And I am the Saturday night, 9 p.m. keynote speaker in the big room. What am I going to be speaking on? Asteroid mining and the future of energy. Oh, let me tell you. This presentation is going to be stunning. Absolutely stunning. The presentation is going to be good. And guess what? I'm going to have a brand new book that I'm debuting at that conference that goes along with that presentation. It is a complete consolidation and compilation and my commentary and analysis of asteroid mining and the future of energy. It covers the cislunar space, which is the space between Earth and the moon. It covers a moon colony and moon development for helium-3 production, for helium-3 fusion, which can replace all the uranium that we're using to power our electrical plants in this world, actually. It covers the cis-Mars space, which is the space between the moon and Mars. And it also covers the settlement of Mars, which is being covered from 2 aspects. One is a straight Earth-Mars launch, and the other is using the moon as a launching point for even bigger expeditions to Mars. And then the ultimate, it covers the belt. Beyond Mars is this asteroid belt that has innumerable asteroids in it. You can't even count them all. Billions of them just lying out there. And a lot of these asteroids are solid ice, water, frozen out there in space. It covers... thank you, Scott. Scott has another top chat. Says, Scott Hare, some NPIEE funds for you, Brooks. Wish I can do more. You know, if we had 1 million of you do this, we're done. We're ready to launch. We're going to Russia with 125, mostly scientists from 6 different universities. We're going to pick up some more along the way between now and the time we go in August of 2021, and a film crew. And the film crew is going to be taking the Opto cameras with them. These are 4K little gimbal cameras, very stable. And we're going to be streaming live from the ship. That's going to be going up to the satellite, out to 2 distribution points, one in Europe, one in the US, and out to hopefully hundreds of thousands of pay-per-view customers. And the answer is no. There is no money in this for me. In fact, the only money that has gone into this, other than these contributions here tonight, is from me. Yes, tens of thousands of dollars from Brooks has gone to NPIEE over the years, and that is what has funded us so far. Yes, I said thank you, David, for the $5. Thank you, David Caldwell, and thank you, Scott Hare. Wonderful, wonderful listeners. Thanks so much. Next week, it's the week to bring a friend. So tonight we had about 50 live listeners on YouTube Live. Next week, we break 100. Deal? Next week, we break 100 here live on YouTube. And thank you all at Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com. We are live out there, and we are right up against Blaze TV. On TalkStream Live. We are now right up against Blaze TV. So keep it going. We'll see you next week. Peace, Earth Explorers.